We are live and direct here at the Bach House. I am Nutebek Sue, and we're here live with Saste Mater for another showing of EMWOT's The Art of Economic Development. Saste Mater is the green griot, and we're doing a green griot gathering right here the east side of Troost Avenue. East meets west of Troost. Come and enjoy our presentation today. We're just going to chop up a lot of our comments of what's going on, the flurry of what's going on here in Kansas City. Come and be a part of our audience. If you would like to make your comments on our, feel free to make your comments throughout. Please like and share what we have to offer. This is a piece of Kansas City. This is the East Side voice for Kansas City. Come and join us. Thank you.
Killing false headlines with rhymes. Boundary by Crime Stoppers, leaving outlines around innocent minds. What happened to hip-hop? Lyrics got rich quick, and promiscuous hips full tricks, like a stripper for a tip. Message, popping hips, listening quick, snitching on the message. In a mess of ages, expression over Smith and Wesson. Oil slick, former 3/5, now shop the CDs for identity. Cause at the end of the month, ends don't which means no meat for the family. So dirty dealers, cut words, package hurting cuss words. Keep it real ghetto, the new hero. Stars, struck like lightning. Living hard behind bars. Profit. Blood stains like tar. In the grass, the glass stay brown. Thieves, green as grass. Black male, dressed in all black, wearing black look.
Talking about hip-hop and our cultural product that our community has created. I'm live on both cameras, so we've got a good show lined up for the day. We're gonna go through some hot topics. We got our very own Nutebek Sue, artist, sculptor, author, anthropologist. Here joining us today as we chop up the art of economic development. We talked about last week we had Ricardo Lucas in the house, and we had our brother Michael Robinson Summers. You know, you'd like to put that Robinson there, let them know who his clan is. So we got a real chance to try to connect. And you'll be seeing that on a lot of our feeds. We'll be putting out some more bullet points. We already put out our hot topics section where we went over some hot topics that were going on, and then we also went into the next piece, which was a little wrap up where the authors told a little bit about themselves last time. Today. We've got some real good topics. When we talk about economic development, and how the arts are, how it's an art. It's a lot easier to do economic development in a rural area where there's not rules and there's not entrenched forces. So when we get into the art of economic development, we got to drill down a little bit more. And one of our hot topics from last week was actually the changing of the name of Martin Luther King. Got a quick commercial for us about our content here?
Yes, I'm here to just promote what we're doing here in Kansas City. This is our brand of our CD. East meets west of truth means economic development. It's green sustainability. It's youth and development. We actually have been following along the same lines as the young rapper Nipsey Hussle, in that we foster economic development by working with youth development, at-risk youth, by engaging in entertainment, which is a vehicle that all of our youth are engaged in. using the media for our power and investment, promoting entrepreneurialism. And and in this particular CD, it's a compilation that lists a variety of our local artists. We have Maurice Copeland, who actually was the colonel. We called him the colonel. He ran the objective for the anti-nuclear bomb development factory that's right here in the heart of Kansas City. They first tried to forestall, they tried to stop the refurbishment of the existing Honeywell site location. They were going to turn it into a child care center, which is crazy. Also, community update. Dirty D, that was his previous name, known as King Kihei, who is one of our star rappers here in Kansas City, from Hawaii. Cheridith Brooks, which is a homegrown, what we call it's a community. It's called intentional community. And there are a lot of, that's a private objective. People who have particular religious beliefs or community efforts can come together and create their own intentional community. Nuclear weapons, Sanj Kaya. Self-destruction is the Recipe Poetry Guild. These are our star artists during the time that we were fighting and using our art to make public protest, artists to activism. We also have Michael Summers, Bigger Than Me. We have Ricardo Lucas, Programmed for Murder. These books are live and direct here, right here on the site of our East Meets West of Truth bot house. We also have the 21 Keys. Recently, we have promoted Rick Ross. We've been promoting Rick Ross to come to Kansas
Freeway
City.
Rick Ross.
Yes, the real freeway Rick Ross. For at least 5 years now, going on now, where we are talking about the realities that we have to pull the covers off of, and that we don't make coca leaf. We don't have those trees growing in our community. We don't have poppy fields, but we're fighting in areas that do. And that was what Vietnam was about. That's what, so without standing on my soapbox, I wanted to emphasize, yes, he was involved in this, so was Oliver North. And Oliver North walks free, and this gentleman is criminalized in many people's minds. So the idea of being critical thinkers. And we also have our African News World. This is a powerful presentation of information that shows us the local Missouri objectives of what we're doing here in Kansas City. This particular newspaper features the organ of the Universal African Peoples Organization, and they came to Kansas City and actually did a promotion at the Green Duck Lounge here in Kansas City to reopen the case for the Leon Jordan objective. And the Green Duck is a controversial topic that we really need to look at on the east side of Kansas City.
All right. So for our sponsors, we want to make sure people know they can go to our link and our site. It is EMWOTKC.blogspot. EMWOTKC.blogspot, and you can click on there and find out the link to purchase all the items. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into our material. When we talk about the art of doing something, we distinguish an art versus a skill. Skill, basically, you're hammering, you're doing repetitive, that's the skill of doing something. But when you develop that talent to the point where you now have to navigate doing your work, and you're actually able to get your pace up to the point where people say, well, no, most people aren't going to be able to do what this person is. That's when you become an artisan. It becomes an art. So one of the things that we're navigating through right now is what seemed to be such a really simple thing was let's just change, pick a street and change the name of the street, and we got a lot of backlash, and the street name was changed back. Artfully, when we talked about how, where's the CD? When we talked about, when we did the anti-nuclear weapons plant protest, when we went in September with our ballot initiative to put it on the ballot, the city council was so artful. What they did was they said, hey, we don't want your ballot initiative on the November election because it's going to be a low turnout, and would you consider moving it to spring? And he said, well, no, what did you have in mind? So after some negotiations, they agreed to go ahead and they went ahead and they went ahead and passed our part of our initiative that was concerning green jobs and making a commitment from the city to invest in green jobs, solar, wind, conservation. They made that commitment and they passed that one unanimously, and then we were able to fight it out in the spring when everybody was ready. So we can't really talk about the whole settlement, but they were able to make it worth our while to move our ballot, and we got about the same amount of votes on the 20. I think we got like 26%. I think the Martin Luther King keeping the name change, they got about 30%. So it was a similar type of movement. But then the next piece there is now, okay, we've lost this one. How do we organize in a way to where we know we can be victorious next time? So in order to do that, you want to try to take a step back. You want to look at the other party's argument and see exactly, what they were saying. So we've got experience in it. We got experience in doing this. So let's jump right in here. What I got pulled up is if you can look at NBC News, there's a Missouri City removes Martin Luther King's name off of Boulevard sign. And then Al Sharpton is interviewing our Representative Cleaver about it, and he goes into some of the details. But what I want to do is, in part of that video, it actually shows the actual people standing in the church with these Save the Paseo green signs on with their arms locked. So that image is going to last forever for the organizers of this. And I'm sure the community is going to recognize how they've taken us to another level.
Another low level. I would, to me, the fact that this reverberated out to the entire nation, that, to me, my attitude is shame.
MSNBC is international.
Right.
So we got our ex-mayor and our U.S. representative talking to, Al Sharpton on MSNBC. That's pretty.
That's deep. And the idea that people hate that much, that people are so determined in, whose street, my street type of pettiness, that they would actually undermine and, create this kind of strategy.
And we want to have an opportunity if anybody has any comments and they want to make any feeds. We shared it onto East Meets Western Truth already.
Yes.
Okay, so we're on East Meets Western Truth. Somebody wants to add any feeds on there, we can see the feeds. We can answer any questions. But when we talk about, one of the things that you have to do on our economic development is that you got to build the foundation. So whatever their intentions are, we're gonna dig down, do some erudition, and dig down and see exactly if we can understand, what their intentions may have been. So I take you to this. If you go to Wikipedia and you put in the Paseo, Kansas City, Missouri, it's going to bring up this beautiful page here. And if you look at it, it's got this great street, and it talks about it's 85 blocks, it's 10 miles. But then he starts getting into some of the history of the street, and the major boulevard was suggested by the first president of the Parks Board, Arthur R. Meyer, from 1851 to 1905, based on the Paseo de Reforma in Kansas City. So, in Mexico City. So, you look at that and you say, wow, that was a Kansas City. Mr. Meyer from Meyer Boulevard came in, changed the city, and when you look at it, you say, well, I wonder why they did that. Well, that's how we get a little erudition. When you start going down, you dig a little bit deeper. They got some of the background on the Paseo de Reforma, and you go down and it has points of interest. But if you get way down here in the references, something pops up in here that you kind of go, hey, let me take a look at this. It's not the first one, it's not the second one. You got to go all the way down to the bottom here.
Okay, just remember that the word Paseo, it's almost like a street or a walkway. Paseo is passageway or an area to walk. So it's not like it was a word that actually had any kind of profound meaning. And as he stated, it was named after the passageway for.
We're gonna tell you where they was trying to get a pass to go. Okay. So you get down here and you see this book down here. It's called A City Divided: The Racial Landscape of Kansas City, 1900 to 1960, and it's written by the University of Missouri Press. You can see that link on the 10th reference, and we're gonna get to. You click on that link, and it takes you to this discussion right here, and this.
What's the name of that book?
This is a city. Hold on, let me pop back. Oh yeah, A City Divided: The Racial Landscape of Kansas City, 1900 to 1960. So you get into here, and what we find out is on page 20, there's this discussion right here, okay? And this discussion takes place when the city leaders are trying to deal with Paseo. And at the time, we have this mafia gang boss running the city, balancing different parts of the city against each other. If you could just imagine that, pitting the sides against each other, pitting the church folks against the middle class who want to aspire to be elites. So let's do a quick reading on here. Without injunctions to will, the society, that's the society of good Christian good folks, watched helplessly as prostitution spread across the North End. the north end of Kansas City, 12th to 19th Street. Streetwalkers, most of them who now lack the protection they had received from the madams of the brothel district, took their clients to the rooming houses that clustered between 12th and 19th Street, the northern end of Paseo. The grandest of the city's new boulevards acquired an unsavory reputation. In the central business district itself, employees of the hotels along the principal western thoroughfares procured women, liquor, and narcotics for guests, while drug peddlers followed the brothel keepers back into the wide open north end. So here we are, our city leaders. At one time, they had all the prostitution segregated into a certain area, kind of like when we had our red light district, and you had all the strip houses in a certain area.
It was by the riverfront.
And they had segregated, and what turned out by continuing reading is the term segregation was a term. It was a law enforcement economic development term, meaning that we're going to segregate criminal activity from good neighborhoods. It had no relation to race whatsoever. It was a criminal act. It was a way to keep criminals from doing business in good areas by having a place for them all to move.
Right.
So
good areas were considered what? The schools and the churches?
Well, the good areas are the places where people of a certain economic level could go. They could move their kids. They could build schools, set up schools, and they could send their kids to good schools. And you wanted to keep all that living and education and everything away from the crime, so you called it segregation. And it's a law enforcement type term, to segregate the crime. Well, what happened when they closed down all the brothels and stopped taking the money from the brothels, all the crime spread out unsuspectingly into the Paseo area. So now, where this nice boulevard, where Mr. Meyer built this nice boulevard, there's drug dealers and prostitutes, and they just tore down, is that the Armour Hotel that's right there on 5th and Paseo, reminiscent of this time era. But this was a battleground for trying to control crime and basically, if you keep reading, what happened when they closed that red district down, the crime spread all over the city. Okay, so from an art of economic development standpoint, that was a bad move. Some people say it was a good move or whatever, but it's an art. So that kind of tells you what was happening down in that area and how this Paseo turned into a crime-ridden area with drugs and prostitution and so forth. And there was no development down there after they put the parks in. So that's a little bit. That takes us back to the early 1900s, and we can get an idea for. Oh wow, this Paseo area is a little bit more controversial than we thought. So let's take the next step. And go back just one more step, and let's say that the street was named after the Paseo de la Reforma. So the Paseo de la Reforma is a street in Mexico City. And guess what? It had its name changed. Okay? So, so in order to understand this, what you had was a situation where Spain, England, and France came up with this scheme to force Mexico to pay its taxes, to pay back the money they had invested in the area. So this is a global scheme to force a country to pay its colonizers. So unfortunately, Napoleon comes along and he tries to backcut Spain and England. And he sends a force over there and he goes in and takes over the city of Mexico. So now he's gone in and taken control of the city of Mexico, and is to try to get all the money for himself. First thing he does, he appoints an emperor to run the city. And this emperor's name is Maximilian. Now Maximilian, he really doesn't care too much about the city. He's the new emperor. So what Maximilian does, and this may sound familiar to a Kansas Citian, he takes over this castle. And in this castle, he puts his cousin, who is called the Empress, in the castle, and to make his commute easier, he digs a street on a diagonal directly from the Mexico City town to the main area. He digs a street, a Paseo, a boulevard, straight through the city at a diagonal, straight up to the castle that he's made for the Empress, to make his commute a lot easier. Terrible planning, people displaced, don't worry about it, the housing was never replaced, so forth, so on. So
kind of like 71 Highway?
Maybe Paseo is a great name for this street, because to just drive it straight through the city from where you're trying to get to, maybe that's
So what was it called before? It was called originally Paseo
this is
de la Empresa.
okay. Yeah, this is the way they say it. Paseo de la Imperatriz. Imperatriz. Now that means the promenade of the Empress. Now, this is the intent and the meaning behind this street removal. Somebody, just the elites, just saying, hey, I want to get from here to there faster, and we're going to displace everybody. And
like 71 Highway.
Like 71 Highway, so
I worked in the land tax division back in 1981.
give me a little bit more volume.
And I saw the highway stenciled in on the records department maps, because I used to go and do the surveys and check to verify the tax records, so that when we made the presentation of the case against a person for the tax sale, everything was good. And I saw that stenciled in. It was pale, but it was stenciled in right across houses, right across businesses, right across churches. And they had their little route that they had intended. And so just a reminder that some people make 50-year plans. And some people, even though we have a heart of the city, 50-year plans. And some people, even though we have a heart of the city plan for Kansas City, there are people who have another plan that overlaps that or undermines that.
The
And
will
so,
of the people.
and I'm thinking about the Big Five. When I first heard about the plan of action that's being done by some of the 50 major leaders of Kansas City, they called it the Big Five, and then they just changed the name. So we can't find the record of what their progress is because it disappears under that title. You can't do a search. So you have to search, and then that search gets disrupted, and then you can't find the information, and then you don't know where it is. And that's how people cloak things in this city.
Well, you can only do as much cloaking as you can. Now, in 1867, what they call the Second Mexican Empire with Maximilian, they came in, took back over, and after they executed him, they got rid of the bum. After they got rid of him, what they did then was change the name of the street to represent the will of the people at that time. Yes, it was the Paseo de la Empresa, but the will of the people was that time is over. That's something that was forced upon us. That's something that we saw people displaced, and we don't want that to be the spirit of this major, beautiful street with a lot of our institutions on it. So let's change to something that reflects the spirit of who we are here in Kansas City. So what they changed the name of the street to was the Paseo de la Reforma. Named it after the movement that was able to overthrow Napoleon's appointed emperor assigned to pull money and resources and silver out of the city, okay? So sometimes you can't just read that one Wikipedia article. You gotta go down and you gotta get to that last reference, especially take that last reference about the displacement of African Americans. You gotta check that last reference, and then you want to go ahead and do your own research, because when Meyer changed the street, and when they have the Kansas City Paseo article, they don't mention the Plaza de la Reforma, de la Impress. They don't mention France taking over, and they don't mention the scheme about the Spanish and the French and the English empires, the same old folks trying to create a different balance to the movement that was happening in America. Because what they were able to do was they had a coalition of the Catholic Church to offset the Protestant movement going on in America. Now they had an international different movement there. They had some of the local indigenous people, and they had some of the elites who just said, we're going to get together and we're going to bring France in, and we're going to overthrow the first Mexican Empire. So you got to dig a little bit deeper, and you're starting to get kind of agile and artistic with it. So we talked about the origins of the Paseo. Is that what we want our street named after? We talked about the city divided, how every time they're trying to solve some big city problem, they always dump it right into the areas or the African Americans the most impacted. Their needs go last. like the Heart of the City plan. We're not executing those plans. You know, you can't ask a politician, hey, what's the Heart of the City plan say? And they say, this, and that's what I'm going for. I'm going for what the people said they wanted on the economic development level. So that's just a little bit about that. I think we had one more comment, and this is kind of a teaching moment for us. When they were able to change the direction of Mexico, they had to deal with international forces. They had to deal with their own rivalries. You know, you had some indigenous people wanted to keep the old way, and some new other indigenous people wanted to do anything but stay the way they were. And then they had, France brought the Catholic Church with them, and Catholic Church and the Protestant movement church, they're just like Martin Luther,
Who was the Protestant
of
the Catholic.
Like Martin Luther,
Wow.
who was the first to leave the Catholic Church, were on the opposite side of this emperor that they brought in. So sometimes you got to realize that there are things going on that is bigger. You know, sometimes things are bigger than me. You know, and you gotta navigate this thing, because Martin Luther is the natural reformer, and we've got to build a coalition for Kansas City, hopefully, that represents us all, and it can solve some of our segregation, basic crime in certain area problems, in a way that makes the city something that Martin Luther King will be proud of, that make the city something that when we talk to our people around the world, we're not those despicable people that didn't want to honor Martin Luther King. So that's basically, we want people to, before you pick a side, I want you to do some studying. I want you to hit these links, and I want you to, this is before you pick a side. Because after you do this study, we want to hear what type of feeling do you think we should take into our discussion for economic development on the east side of Kansas City. All right?
All right.
That's about it. We're going to go ahead, have a little musical interlude, take a little break, get some water, and get back to you with some of your comments.
Feel free to post up on our page. This is East Meets West of Truth. We have a page and a group objective where we communicate to the Kansas City community the interest of economic development. Our youth are our future. And so the idea of our young people being engaged in the political process, our young people having the knowledge of social studies, of civics in the Kansas City metro area, and understanding who our leadership is very vital and important. Please like and share this onto your feeds so that other people can be aware. And if you would like to have a topic of discussion that you would like to talk about for our events, please feel free to inbox us. We are on East Meets West of Truth, the page on Facebook. You can always select a message and inbox us, and we get this information, and we'll be able to communicate with you. We also have an email, which is EMWOT, EMWOT hyphen KC at gmail.com. We have our blogspot, EMWOT-KC.blogspot.com. It's our blog where we post current event information and updates for the Kansas City area. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect and engage us. And if you would like to be a part of our endeavor of grassroots organizing, of economic development, of youth engagement, working with prison reentry objectives for green sustainability, please connect. We are here live and direct on Wednesdays at in the afternoon, the morning afternoon, from 12 to 12 o'clock at the Black Box, 4001 Troost Avenue. And then we're also available on Sundays. We have a movie night where we actually engage our community.
In the live video. Did you end the live video?
You want me to end it? Restart it?
Yeah.
Change your mind from that bullshit spit niggas is wasting time. So fresh and love me the show. The open doors await in your mind. I'm a picture, I hate to bust your bubble wrap, but I got an antidote for darkness in my duffel bag. A Molotov for the Holocaust, a couple rags in the middle of a war, so I'll be sure my knuckles brass. Something that's trying to reside inside of your righteous mind. They're like piranha, so I'll be following right behind. I get it from my father, y'all, this little light of mine. Aiming for the game, a sniper with a rifle on. Trying to switch it up, I gotta shift the paradigm. Cause the negativity inside will leave you paralyzed. This ain't the music for the faint of heart or weary eyes. This for those who run the distance of this marathon. They steady pushing this product on the impoverished. And that's a part and a parcel of what the problem is. They drew a line and I'm on the side of the positive. Cause I'm a pin pusher to usher us to our providence.
Of a drive-by and died. Translated, open your heart and spit it with your third eye. What happened to hip-hop? Brother, sister, daughter, son got infatuated with the power of a gun. Too afraid to knuckle up and go toe-to-toe. Yeah, now it's who's quicker with a fofo. No more beat street unless you get beat in the street. No sprees, blade, 100 stacks means you was beat by the streets. No more love, peace and laceless sneaks. Every other bar, hollow points blowing off your piece. Or maybe I'm just deaf. Most industry cats think they fresh. Studio gangsters, 15-minute tasters, getting 10% of their paper. Everything red, no personal possession, no gold, no platinum equals back in your mama's basement. So what happens to hip-hop? Battles on the corner for lyrical supremacy. When with the mic and steel wheels, we turned out the party. When the block stood, one for all for one. In the middle of the block, cypress to the moon gave way to the sun. So what happened to hip-hop? Money happened to hip-hop. happened to hip hop. Greed happened to hip hop. Ignorance happened to hip hop. So what happened to hip hop? It became a reflection of the pains we live, the false definitions of culture. So what happened to hip hop? Sex and violence became #1 sellers. Hella, heaven can't straddle the fence. So what happened to hip hop? I don't know. Ask the CEOs and major labels. Ask the leaders who tried to ban it. Ask the lyricists that got dropped when they tried to preach it. Because I'm just a poet, trying to right my wrongs through poetic songs. Trying to touch that lost soul through spoken word on the beat that make your hips hop in your head nod. So what happened to hip hop? It got incorporated by the nemesis of God. Hip hop is dead, cause it became bro. No more hoes, no more Cancos. We holler black top, slang yo, and train hoes. We in the game though, that's what we living like. We holler move, work, do dirt, and get your stripes. Seduce a loose skirt and lift work and get your ice. The only beatboxing is owning up your head. Cut it, grit, get the bread. Strut, dip, and shift your sheds. For the love of a Babylon, but I'm a sad and I get my travel. With a 1,000 pills in the cup, and homie rap about it, and they hate me cause I talk on crack house when they crowded. But love when the mouth is slamming blacks doing life, being tired, pushing white, taking flights on some tripe, searching for the right kick, hurting for the right plug. If we ain't got tight fits, it's certain that we don't thug.
I'm live at the and I post, I don't know. I don't know where it is.
I'm asking you a question about your phone.
I'm
What happened in hip hop? When being real beatbox, scratch, popped and locked and dropped bodies, shot by Def Jam and Silence Death. What happened to killing false headlines with rhymes? Badly buried by Crime Stoppers, leaving outlines around innocent minds. What happened to hip hop? Lyrics got rich quick, and promiscuous hips full of tricks, like a stripper for a tip. Message, hopping hips, listening, quit snitching on the message. In a mess of ages, expression over Smith & Wesson. Oil slick, former 3/5, now shop for CDs for identity. Cause at the end of the month, ends don't meet, which means no meat for the family. So dirty dealers, cut worth package, heard the cuss words. Keeping the real ghetto, the new hero. Stars, struck like lightning, living hard behind bars. Prophets, prophet, prophecy, blood stains like tar. In the grass and glass playground, things green as grass. Blackmail, dressed in all black, wearing black gloves. Don't want to touch February with a black fist. Green with envy for the green behind the 8 ball. Black ball mountains and stuff. Crash wells on Black Monday. But the stock market, Marcus Black bleeding on the black top. Shot by a black man, shot by a black cop. In the projects, it's Black Ops / hip hop. We making mud pies. It's a recipe with dirty D speaking peace into people's lives. These words are ride or die for all our time. We define life through rhyme, digging deeper into shallow minds. Third eyes wide to defeat evil with peaceful lines. In time to eternally survive. Searching for inner peace within public souls. Praying the wheel kneel next to God's throne. Once we've been called home to streets paved in gold, and no longer is pain and suffering roam. Battling the demons, DNA placed within our hearts. Mentally challenged from the start, or so they thought. Because we arrived knowing that we'd one day depart. Growing older, yet still searching for the truth at heart. See, time is the game we play because we play with time, but it's what we do with our time, ourselves we define. Knowing within ourselves true happiness we shall find, for we are direct descendants of the almighty divine soul. No matter what they say they think you should be, stand fast in your vision, never stray from belief. Just give it all you till you make it to the top. Strap your heart to your palm and make them hate. I can feel heart beating, pulsating with the rhythm, living art, free inspiration is those rhythms, leave a lasting impression. Witness my steel, picture description, sexual appeal, the charts of my magnetism, the skill in this mic are real, handling aphorisms like double-edged blade steel, straddling the fist of duality with every burst, the challenge is ripped, every new vitality with words, a sacred thought, between life and death, that's what I hold, your heart in my palm, circulate breath through the microphone, emotions are gone, respond to what's been told, I capture it all, full of emptiness just like the hole, the black night, seldom seen, but always visible, shining like armor on these streets, and in the city, you giving you vivid truth and hope, you old enough to grow up, it's like brilliance on stage every way, when I saw it, come on, come on. This is peace with soul, half and whole, heart and gold. Heavy loads, dodging potholes, running in black holes with lost souls. Tread to the road, loving, living, and letting go. Karma full circle, naked as my soul unscroll, putting my laundry out for show. So folks can criticize my life because they think they know my pick and roll. As I flow, that be told. Without an ounce of gold, I'm getting paid on this road. I paved it to feel whole. It's a metaphor. Source explored, talk intact, definitely a artifact. Anything you use is using you. You're here to find what you came to do. Only then will your heart be true. One love blooms, kiss from the womb. Conversation is a gift, temples grip like a myth of instance in upper room. No pride, calm mind, I scribe the psalm with a Buddhist palm. Making arms, putting mind over matter, speaking to the immortal. Oh.